Hello out there and welcome to today's Search Engine Journal webinar. I hope you're having a great day and we're thrilled to have you here with us. I am joined by John Earnshaw, Chief Product Evangelist and co-founder of Pi Data Metrics, and Sophie Muhl, the head of product and marketing at Pi Data Metrics. Thank you both for being here with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Awesome. All right, so today everybody is here to talk about the actionable ways to improve the ROI of your SEO strategy. Right now in today's space, it's never been more important to prove ROI to your stakeholders. And the tactics that John and Sophie are going to lay out, they're actionable, they're things that you're going to be able to take back to your desk once you get right back to work. Not that this isn't work, but you know what I mean. So let's get to it. My name's Heather. I'm going to be your moderator today. Please use hashtag SEJ webinars to share any cool tidbits from today's learning on social. I'm going to go over some quick housekeeping and then I'm going to turn this over to John and Sophie. So if you do experience any technical difficulties, please use the chat box to let us know. We're monitoring that and we'll be able to troubleshoot if you need anything. There's a tab for questions and for chat. So if you have questions, we will be taking questions at the end of the presentation. If you see a question that somebody has asked that you do like, give it the little thumbs up and you can upvote that. And that tells us it's a little bit more important to all you out there viewing today. And so we're going to answer as many of them as we can at the end of the presentation. There is closed captioning. It's the CC in the top right corner. So if you need that, just click that button and we'll do our best to link to resources or tools in the chat, but they will also be included in your recap email. After the webinar, if you can stick around for a short survey, it doesn't take more than just a couple of minutes and it really helps us gauge, how effective the webinars are and how we can make them more useful for you going forward. And lastly, you will absolutely receive today's recording, the slides and everything in your inbox later today. So with that, I'm going to get out of here. John, Sophie, it's all yours.
Thank you, Heather.
Great.
Sophie, over to you.
Great. Well, as Heather said, I'm Sophie Muhl. I'm the head of product and marketing at Pi Data Metrics. I've had over 10 years experience now working in search marketing, both B2C and B2B, where I am now at Pi. Before I worked at Pi, I was actually a customer of theirs, so love them so much I came to work for them.
Amazing. Okay, did you want to do any more on this slide, Sophie, or am I?
No, why don't you introduce yourself, John?
Sorry, I'm ahead of myself. Yeah. I'm John Earnshaw. I'm the one of the founders and the chief product evangelist at Pi Data Metrics. I've been working in search for over 20 years. It feels like 100 years. It's my passion. It's my life. I love it. And I love nothing more than exploring the SERP. And today we've got some amazing things to share with you. So that's my intro done.
Great. Just quickly, for those of you who don't know, Pi Data Metrics, where we both work, is an enterprise-grade SEO platform, and we specialize in helping e-commerce businesses identify the best commercial opportunities to focus on within the organic search space. So without further ado, I'll let John kick in with his topics.
Wonderful. Thank you again, Sophie. So the SERP, where I spend my life, where I spend it every day, has never been more dynamic, nor has it been more exciting, nor has it been more responsive to content updates. We're going to show you some really good examples of this in a bit. And of course, with all the excitement about ChatGPT, Bing's new search engine, Bard, we're seeing a resurgence, thank goodness, in conversational search, which is actually super exciting. So more on that shortly. Notable updates of recent. We couldn't do this without mentioning that recent core update. Going to show you some data on that shortly. Was it big? Was it bad? Who knows? We'll share some insights. Then, of course, we've had the most recent helpful content update, a product review update. We'll touch on the core in a second. But before we do that, Sophie, I've got a question for you. With all these rules constantly changing, how on earth do you keep up?
Yeah, very good question. So it's arguably never been a better time or perhaps a worse time to be an SEO than at the moment, because there are things flying all over the place that as SEOs, we obviously have to keep up to date with and make sure we're on top of. People like John, incredibly passionate about all of these updates. And you're probably going to be asked by senior stakeholders in the business about these things. But what we're really passionate about at Pi is that you can get a long way and find a lot of value in getting the fundamentals right still in SEO and getting some of those basics sorted by simply focusing and prioritizing on the areas of the highest opportunity. But before we go into those kind of quick steps, I'll let John indulge you in the March core update and findings we've had so far.
Thank you, Sophie. I'd love to. And while we do that, I'm just looking to see where all these people are coming from in a chat. Oklahoma, Vermont, Buffalo, LA. It's amazing. Anyway, back to the core update. This was long awaited. Up until now, for the past 3 years, we had updates every 3 months, 117, 121 days between them. What sort of impact? Potentially less, because elements of it have been filtering into those helpful content updates and other updates. But let's take a look. So here we have a visibility index. This is a super interesting one. This is based on some global publishers, just happens to be in the German market. And if you look at this visibility index, we got an axis on the left of 0 to 100. And then we've got the last 3 months, well, since the 1st of January. And you can see the core update, the impact of that. Every single one of these publishers took a dive, which is interesting, because if you look back, there was this update that Google rolled out in January the 18th, I think. And some of these websites, they actually went up in that update, only to have it taken away a couple of months later with that core update. Now, I know everybody loves a disaster. I know this from LinkedIn whenever I post, but take a look at this. If you think this core wasn't big, this is a major UK website that lost a ton of visibility. This website, hi, your money or your life. You all know what that means. The content on this website could potentially affect the future health, wealth, or well-being of the audience. And my word, they still haven't recovered to this day. I looked at the site and it was obvious. No quality signals. Who were they writing the content for? Who was writing the content? And where were the references? None of that was to be found. That's a shocker, isn't it, Sophie?
Yeah, I love a disaster story, as everyone else in the SEO world does. Apparently people don't react to success stories, only disaster stories. So
yeah, I sometimes put a good one on LinkedIn and get nothing, absolutely nothing. So, Sophie, I'm going to pass back to you.
Yeah, so with all this in mind, as I said before, it's really important to remember that you can get so far in SEO with just getting those foundations right. So we're going to go through 5 ways now that we found helping our customers to really drastically improve the ROI of their organic search strategy. So I'm going to start off with one of my favorite topics, seasonal keyword trends. So before I go into some of the insights on this, we're just going to have a quick poll. So I believe there'll be a poll coming up imminently. So the poll is, are you currently using search trend data within your business? So there's a couple of options here. Yes, within the search function. Yes, across the wider organization. So perhaps sharing those insights with brand or product teams, or not currently at all. So I'm just going to give a couple of seconds for people to submit their answers on those things. I'm really interested to see the results on this, because I've got a feeling it might not be as widely used as it could be, but let's see what the results come out as.
I just submitted mine.
Did you?
Yeah, I did.
I put do it later.
No, do it now.
I didn't want to tarnish the results.
Just to chime in, if that didn't pop up for anyone, it's under the polls tab. But right now, so leading the charge, yes, we've got 40% saying yes within the search function and 34% saying not currently all. The remainder of saying yes across the wider organization.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Heather. So one of the things I learned while I was working on kind of B2C side of marketing within search was how invaluable this search data can be to the rest of the organization. I think sometimes in SEO, we forget that our roots are in marketing. Marketing is all about anticipating customer needs. So in this world of unpredictability, it's always nice to find something that is predictable. So within search trend data, particularly if you're tracking it back historically, so here we've got 3 years back of historical search trend data across the fashion sector. you can see that there are some very obvious patterns with these search trends. So I've specifically pulled out the category of coats and jackets here. Arguably not a surprise that this category peaks in the winter months, but I think it is a surprise how early the demand for these products start to increase, all the way basically from June. So using some of these repeatable search trends and spotting where those real peaks are and where those increases in the peaks are can really help ensure that you've got the content not just produced but optimized at the right time to really capitalize on all of that demand. Also, if you go down really granularly into the data, you can start seeing those specific products that people are searching for, which I've found absolutely invaluable to hand across to product and merchandising teams within the business. Because it's all very well and good optimizing your content for some of those products, but if you haven't got anything to sell, then obviously you're kind of going to fall short there. So communication and collaboration across teams is really key here. So just to quickly summarize how we do this, so we categorize all of our search terms to be in line, usually with the categories and subcategories within the navigation of a website. Monitor that collective search volume over quite a long period of time. So I said we use 3 years here. Just identify those peaks and troughs and plan your content well in advance of those peaks, and also share that data with other teams across the business, for example, product and merchandising. We've got a much more thorough guide on how to do this, which is downloadable from these slides here. Right, so that's seasonal trends. The second point I'm going to make is around finding and capitalizing on low-hanging fruit. So within search, when we're working with our content teams, we spend an awful lot of money, obviously, creating that content and getting it live. And there's a lot of that content that does rank really well within Google. So here we have a chart of revenue opportunity for different pieces of content for this particular website. It shows the amount of commercial opportunity these topics could have and these products could have, which is kind of this very pale blue line here, but the pink line in this chart represents all of the revenue opportunity from URLs and content sitting on page 2 and 3 within the SERPs. So the effort has gone in to create this content to get it ranking really well, but it's just not quite in that conversion zone for e-commerce websites. People aren't going to click through and see your products. So it's a really good place to focus your attention because, as I said, this is already there for the taking. And one of the biggest reasons why people can't get their content from pages 2 and 3 onto page 1 is one of John Earnshaw's favorite topics, which is content conflict, otherwise known as cannibalization. So you gave me a really good stat, John, recently around the amount of barriers competing with yourself in the SERP actually presents, didn't you?
Yeah, absolutely, Sophie. We did an analysis of tens of thousands of searches across hundreds of big retailers. And we found that 40% of the content that is off page 1, sitting on 2 and 3, is actually as a result of cannibalization. So it's really shocking.
Yeah, so just to reiterate, 40% of the time you're actually competing with yourself and not your competitors. So sorting that out, monitoring the conflict health of your website is obviously really important, and prioritizing that by potential traffic impact. So really looking at the terms that are high volume, high value, and making sure that you sort out those conflicting URLs first, rather than just getting lost in the weeds of trying to sort out every conflicting URL on your website, because obviously that's a pretty impossible task. Right, I'm going to hand over to John for point 3. Summarized all of that already. So over to you, John.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sophie. Back to the SERP, back to my favorite place where I love to spend my days. There's something I often say to clients when they say, can you get us onto page 1 for this? Or we've fallen off page 1. I always say, before you do anything, look at the SERP. Ask the question, do we belong? Because often, if there is a mismatch of intent between what you see in the landscape and what you're trying to offer, no, you don't belong there. Refine your search and go somewhere else. Now, the SERP itself provides both answers and opportunities. And I want to start this one with a poll. This one fascinates me. I'm really excited to see what you've got to say about this. Okay. Yeah, I gave a lecture. While you're doing that, I gave a lecture last week, and I asked my students the same question, and they came up with, well, the wrong answers. So let's see what you guys can come up with. How many people or how much typing time is saved every day with people using Google's autocomplete? So before you even get to the SERP, well, I'm actually gonna submit. I'm gonna submit.
You're going to vote in your own poll.
At least one. When do we get the answer? Is that coming up here, or do I just announce that?
I think Heather's going to chime in with the answers for this one.
Yeah, I'm really excited on this one too, to find out the answer. But so we've got 54% saying 5 years, and then it's kind of split between 1 year and 200 years. But the majority of people are falling into the 5-year category.
Okay. Well, if you've said 200 years, you can collect your prize. Just go to your fridge and grab something that you can find, because it actually saves 200 years of typing a day. That's how many people are using autocomplete, which is absolutely phenomenal. More on this in a second, so please hold that thought. Now, I mentioned the SERP, this wonderful place. You can learn from it and you can act upon it as well. So what do I mean by learn from it? Well, when you actually look at the search landscape for the search term that you're trying to optimize for, you can learn a lot about your audience. For example, what are they looking for? Autocomplete. Features as well will give you this. Keyword research can give you this. What questions are they asking? People also ask. What are they thinking about? Well, what they're thinking about is impacted by the content they're consuming, and that's the final one. So you can learn a heck of a lot before you even create your content about your audience. And then you can act upon those feature opportunities. So I'm going to show you an incredible example of somebody who dominated the entire landscape of page one because they joined their content up and they knew that they could do this. So before that, let's go back to autocomplete. This is beautiful. What is autocomplete? Autocomplete are Google's predictions. They're not suggestions, they're predictions based on what Google thinks you're going to type next. They're based on what other people have typed as well. And they can give you a lot of insight. Now, I've got 4 searches there. Lose weight. Yeah, we want to lose weight. Get ripped. Yeah, absolutely. Best trainers, best moisturizer. It doesn't matter what you're searching for. Google will make a prediction and give you up to 10 different choices. Now, here's the thing. If you're chasing the trophy term, the lose weight, the get ripped, the best moisturizer, the best trainers, we call the result of that SERP 0. That's SERP 0. So we asked the question, I wonder what the search landscape looks like if anybody clicks on one of these. In totality, when the results were in, every time somebody clicks on here, the likelihood is that SERP is 95% different. So if you're trying to get on page 1 for that original trophy term, and your audience just happen to find one of those interesting and click on it, chances are you're not going to see them again. They're going to go off. They're going to go off on a journey of exploration and discovery through the SERP. More on this. Even if they get into SERP 0, even if they land on there, what's the first thing they see? A minimum of 21 doorways out of there. You've got people also ask, also search for, refine this search. Refine this search. Remember that came up the day before I gave a big talk last year. I got so excited I nearly fell off the stage. Refine my search. These are amazing. Each one of these is a doorway out of that SERP and into a new SERP that potentially is very, very different from the one that you are chasing. This is how we visualize it, and this is how you should think about it. Because of this new journey that your audience is going on, because we've got all of those exits or doorways out of the SERP, you need to be thinking about all these other SERPs that coexist alongside the one that you're so desperately trying to get into. Okay, so we had a client, and that client said, well, how important is this? Do I really need to worry about this, or are you just a nutcase? So we probably, but we did some research anyway. We did some research. What you're seeing here is that journey of exploration and discovery visualized. People also ask, you can leave SERP 0 and go off. B, people also search for related searches. The percentage attached to each of those nodes shows how different the landscape is. Green, the client's there. Red, they're not there. And the longer their customer is going on this journey, the less likely they are to be found. So they still ask the question, John, does it really matter? And I say, well, I'll tell you what, your biggest competitor is in 4 times as many SERP landscapes as you. So yeah, the answer is it actually does matter. So in terms of summarizing this, we need to look at our performance for autocomplete. I'd say if I was using Pi, I'd be tracking performance, not just for the trophies, but for these other terms. Compare your performance with competitors in those refined doorways, those refine my search. What does a landscape look like? We should be tracking all of these, not just the trophies. And for goodness sake, look at your opportunities, look at the landscapes past SERP 0.
We were talking about this earlier as well, John, weren't we? About it's actually probably a lot easier for you to get into some of those positions as well because they're far less competitive than the trophy terms, right?
Exactly. Easier in that respect, and also tends to be a lot less paid activity. This is an organic search goldmine waiting to be tapped, guys. Yeah, you heard it here first. Okay. So, and I mentioned those doorways, and there's this myth in the world of SEO that you can't have multiple positions on page 1, but you know what? You can. Here's a site that does it brilliantly. Answer box, video link, classic link, images, related searches. How have they done that? Because they've looked at the SERP. They've looked at people also ask, they've gathered that data, and they've literally answered all the questions that their audience has, not just in SERP 0, but in those other SERPs as well. And, ignore the myth that you can't have an answer card and a classic link, because you absolutely can. And how are you doing this? How are they doing it? If there's an image block, you've got images, optimize your images. Name them what they are to match the theme of the page. Not 1, 2, 3, 4, JPEG, but men's blazer in blue, JPEG. If the answer box is there, monitor the landscape, look for the opportunities, get onto page 1 and get the answer box. And yes, you can have a classic link as well from another page. We get time, we can maybe tell you how to do that towards the end. And make better connections between your content. The better we get at doing that, the better your audience will understand the relationship between your content, and the better your visibility will be. Okay. So moving on from there. Now, at the start, I mentioned BARD and, my mind's gone, AI and conversation. So conversational search is on the increase, and this leads us neatly into informational searches. And that brings us to our very next poll, which is going to pop up on your screens shortly. In searches related to travel, which of these categories returned by far the highest amount of people also ask? It's a good question. A good question. I got the answer wrong because I thought, people also ask, informational search result. Which of these do people have the most questions about? Flights, holiday types, or accommodation?
Just because I can't vote, I'm going to throw mine out there. I think it's accommodation.
I'm going to put that in for you, Heather. I just voted accommodation for you.
Thanks, John.
That's all right.
We have 46 people saying accommodation, and that is not why I picked it. I picked mine first. We've got 33% saying flights and about 20% saying holiday types.
Okay. Correct answer. It's flights. It's flights. Amazing. And it's so important that you know this, because if you've got content related to either of those 3 subcategories, if you like, then you know where the opportunities are. You know the questions that Google believes the audience has on their minds in relation to that, and they have more questions about flights. So we need more informational content. So this brings us right back into informational content, something that we love to analyze, the SERP. We've got two views of the SERP here. On the left, we've got a SERP radar, where you can analyze a subcategory like flights or accommodation over a period of time. And you can compare that to last month, to the month before, to 3, 6, 9 months ago. And what can you learn from this? You can see how the search landscape is changing. You can see how intent is changing. And you can see what's becoming more important, what's becoming less important. Okay, top, center, answer cards, not so many. But at 4 o'clock, people also ask, which means that your audience have a lot of questions on their minds. So those answer cards, unfilled, are there for the taking. Of course, you've got to get onto page 1 first. How do you do that? Well, you answer the questions in the people also ask and align your content with intent. Now, then we get more granular and we look day by day at individual terms or page themes, and we can see where the images are going up and the images are going down. We can see whether video links or top stories there in green are important. And what can we do with this? Well, we can learn from it. And I've got a great example, and I was showing you this earlier, Sophie, how to compete with the big guys. So there's a client I love in the UK. They're called Hilda. I'll give them a shout out. They're probably not in the audience, but anyway, the subject, it's all about the menopause. Okay, and they are sort of beating the drum and trying to get the message out about the amazing things that you can do. I sold it so badly there. But anyway, they said, we want to own the answer card. How do we do this? I said, well, let's go into the SERP and let's analyze it. Let's look at people also ask. What are the questions that Google believes your audience have on their mind? Those are the questions. Not just that one there, but let's look at others as well. Of course, we theme our content. We have to remember that this is hire your money or your life. So we have to send out quality signals and do all of that. But if we align our content with intent, within 48 hours, you have a beautiful answer card. And it doesn't get much better than that. That made my day, made my week. And you know what? In this age of conversational search, if I'm sitting in my lounge and I say, hey, Siri, what are the best menopause supplements? I wouldn't say that, but my mum might say it. You know, this brand gets into the lounge, and that's how you do it. Okay, I love that little story. So at this point, Sophie, I'm going to be quiet and hand back to you.
Thanks. Before we move on as well, another thing we were talking about earlier on that informational searches point was that it may seem anti-intuitive to not send people straight to a product page or straight to a page that you think is going to lead to a direct ROI straight away. But after conducting some thorough research, we realized that when you land someone on informational content, when they've come from something like People Also Ask, where you're answering your audience's question, they're actually far more likely to go through and convert on your website for products at a higher average order value, and also far more likely to have return visits as well, because you've helped them answer their questions. You've built trust with that audience, and directing them to that content is actually a really good commercial focus.
100%.
Right. Final point. So find and increase your share value. So something we definitely struggle with as SEOs is finding that big top level figure to communicate back to the business as to our progress, where we sit within the market, how we're conducting our optimization versus competitors, all those big questions that we get asked all the time. So a really good way of communicating all the great work that SEOs do is through share of value. So to find our share of value, we've looked at the visibility of all these different websites for tens of thousands of relevant keywords, again, in the fashion sector. Obviously, we do this personalized for different customers. And we've overlaid from visibility scores a commercial value to how valuable we think those categories are based on lots of different metrics, including, as we talked about earlier, like page conversion rates, average order value, CPC rates. And we've given each company a percentage share of voice here. So you can really see you against your competitors, how commercially visible are you in the search landscape, not just as a whole, but by category and by subcategory. So you can really have a look at where you're outperforming your competitors in certain categories and where you're underperforming. So you can see that Nordstrom here is absolutely killing it with their share of value across multiple categories. But there are other players within the market that might be outdoing them on different categories, and that might be then a commercial opportunity for them to focus on going forward. We find monitoring this obviously continuously is really helpful, but quarterly actually really helps, because you can really see how much progress you've made over time. Communicate that back to the business as a really good metric to try and get business level buy-in to the work you're doing and for future business cases as well. So those were our 5 simple, aren't they, John?
Well, I tell you what, Sophie, some of the stuff we covered, just it does seem very basic, very simple, but you know what? It actually works. Tried and tested, analyzing that landscape, looking at data in this way, because what I would do with this, I'd be looking at over time as well and saying, well, who's rising from a share of value perspective, and which category or subcategory are they nailing? And then from there, I'm going to go in and I'm going to look at the landscape and I'm going to see exactly what they're doing. And then I'm going to go back and do some of the things that we've talked about today. I mean, we could have talked for hours, but we'd rather welcome questions, wouldn't we?
Definitely. And on that note as well, we do have multiple resources that go into a lot of these topics in more industries. So we have market leaders by all sorts of different categories: fashion, travel, finance. We have those on our website, as well as some of the more technical things that John was talking through. John's actually also starting a SEO in the Shed crash course. So there's an opportunity to sign up for that and hear more from him going forward as well. So I think that's it, isn't it, John?
I think that is. And I think if I hit the next button, we can go straight into the Q&A. And let's see if we have any. I think Heather's probably curating the questions.
I am, and we got some good ones too, and we have some time. So, if you have extra questions for John and Sophie, definitely put those in the chat. Awesome. Okay, so let's see. Let me grab this over here. Angelique asked, what is the right time? You mentioned optimizing for seasonal keywords, but how far in advance of the uptrend should we begin optimizing? This
is a great question. So obviously it will be different for different topics. So looking over time at those things, you'll be able to see different trends in different topics, obviously with different categories and subcategories. So they'll have different, trajectories, slower growth, faster growth. So if you keep a continuous eye on it over time, you'll be able to see different things will peak at different times of year. But optimizing your content and getting that out kind of, well in advance of the peak, months, I would say, what it allows you to do is get as much traffic to your site organically as possible for that. We saw the increase in the peak. So a month or two before that increase starts, looking at getting your content live and optimized for that period. And then when you are at the peak, you'll be able to use your paid marketing and advertising a lot more effectively because people have already visited your site. So you can use things like retargeting. You might have done data capture, so you can use email at that point. So at that demand peak where CPCs are probably incredibly high and everybody else is competing and trying to get into that space, hopefully you've already influenced your audiences on those types of things. And you can use your paid advertising and marketing in a really tactical way at those points. And then after you've seen a peak, it's really important to evaluate, is that going to happen again next year? Like based on the past trends, do we think this is going to happen again next year? Or is there going to be something else that we think might be coming up where we could direct some of that value to instead? So hopefully that answers that question.
Perfect. So couple questions around keyword cannibalization that came in during that section. So I'm going to go through a couple of these. So Chris asks, are there any good tools for getting rid of keyword cannibalization?
We could spend hours, and I'm not going to, I promise, but was that from Chris, Heather? Was it? Mm-hmm. Oh, well, and Chris is welcome to reach out afterwards because cannibalization is a complex topic. There are three things that we have to think about. You have to think about the identification of it, the fixing of it, and the preventing of it. So when it comes to identifying it, we actually have a conflict detector in our platform that's really quite unique, that will not only identify the amount of conflict that you have, by category and by subcategory, but also how much revenue you could be potentially losing as a result of that. It really is a serious problem. When it comes to fixing, and to be honest, that's a very unique tool. I don't think another one exists. When it comes to fixing it, it's about identifying those pages in conflict and asking the question, which one do I want to become the doorway into my world? Which one do I want to see? Because if I don't make the decision, Google's going to carry on, make the decision one day this page, one day this page, and my visibility will lower. So make the decision, strengthen the theme, the title, and utilize internal links to actually point up to that one. But before you make changes to those other pages, just make sure they don't position in their own right for derivative terms. And then finally, preventing it. That's all about contextual optimization. It's about optimizing in the context of your ecosystem. And this stops it happening in the first place. And as Sophie mentioned, I'm going to be running a webinar on this down the line. So fascinating subject, one that's close to my heart.
That was a really good response. Thank you, John. So let's stick with this for a second, because Ricardo is asking, when selling makeup with the various colors and groups, how do you determine which page to prioritize to prevent keyword cannibalization?
Ricardo, love this question. Yeah, we could just talk about this one for hours. Now, okay, let's think about the search term. So it's makeup. Let's think about lipstick. Comes in many colors. So if you are suffering from conflict, cannibalization for the keyword lipstick, and you find that you've got red lipstick, blue lipstick, green lipstick, orange lipstick, all conflicting with each other, which of course they will do if you don't have a more senior page, a category page. And this is often the case that we run into with clients. When you've got multiple products competing, if there's that much competition, and you're losing revenue, then you need to make a page that sits above those, that you can channel the authority up for the trophy term. And then critically, these lower pages, the red, the green, the yellow, the orange, they can cross-link to each other. So if you want red lipstick, you can go there. If you want green, you can go there. But if you just want lipstick, you go up there. If you want red, yellow, and green, you go down there. It's about signaling to Google. So anytime you run into that challenge, think about creating additional page and send the authority to it.
Perfect. Okay, so here's one from Brandon asking, should you create multiple pieces of content to answer the various long tail search terms related to a shorter search term?
Wonderful question, Brandon. Thank you. It depends, and that's the age-old. It depends. I would say if there is enough search volume, then I think it should warrant its own page. Problem is, as we move into conversational search and longer tail, you're not going to see any search volumes. So that goes out the window. So you're going to need to go with your gut. There is no reason why a single page cannot be on page one for multiple longer tail and derivative terms. There's no reason why not. But if you're struggling and you've got enough content and you're not going to cause conflict, then feel free to break them out if you think there is enough traffic. You can try with one first and then break out.
Okay. Chris is asking, how are you checking search intent for a topic or term?
Okay, well, search intent as classified by the legendary Andre Broder, falls into about 5 different categories. And what we discovered was that if you analyze different landscapes, you can categorize intent based on the features. Answer cards. So, for example, in transactional intent, you get a lot of paid stuff, paid features. Informational, you get answer cards, you'll get video, etc. But the thing most people forget are the modifiers, okay? In the URL, that part of the string that, for example, says buy or sale or read more or blog, those are separated out into informational and transactional. So it's a combination of features and modifiers. And if you want, reach out and I will send you my matrix, which divides the landscape up into 5 different categories of intent and includes the features and the modifiers that you'll find under each.
Well, you guys there's some good questions in here. So I don't know that we're going to get to them all, so we'll send them all over afterwards. And John and Sophie, you can maybe follow up. But Lindsay asks, some of my content is in featured snippets while others are not, even though they're seemingly very similar content. Any secrets to getting featured in the rich snippets?
Okay, well, if we're talking about answer cards, which is the classic snippet that most people want to get found in, first secret, of course, is to get onto page 1. You have to get onto page 1. If you're not on page 1, you can't get that answer card or answer box. Having said that, once you get onto page 1 and then you want to own an answer card, don't just look at the people also ask in SERP 0. Look at the people also ask in the associated SERPs that coexist. We call it the SERP multiverse. Where do you find these? Well, you look at the Google autocomplete SERPs and you look at the Refine My Search SERPs. Pull all of the people also ask out of those and answer some of those questions that are relevant to your content. Voila, as you saw with that Hilda example, next minute, I'm on page 1. Well, 24 hours they had to wait, but that wasn't too hard. Now, the next thing, here's the secret sauce. Oh my goodness, my classic link has vanished. Yeah, it has. You can find it, but there's no reason why you can't have another. You just get a complimentary page and link to that from your one that forms the SERP. As long as it's not overlapping, because then you can still get conflict, and believe it or not, you can have conflict between an answer card and a classic link. Yeah, you can. You can have conflict between an image and a classic link. But anyway, that aside, complementary content, just do what Healthline does so beautifully. Next minute, you got the answer card. Hey, I'm there in voice search. And you got the classic link. But get on page 1 first. That's what you need to do.
Perfect. All right. Let's see. So a good one from Maddie Miller. Maddie asks, as a one-person do-it-all marketing team, what's your best recommendation for simply improving position in the SERP? It's very nice out today. I wish I was in the surf somewhere. We have prioritized content marketing based on keyword research and autocomplete searches, but just not sure what to do next or the best ways to optimize this content. So any tips for a small marketing team looking to make it better?
Okay. Always start with the SERP. As we said, you always start with the SERP and make sure you're learning everything that you can from the SERP. Having said that, the SERP contains your competitors. So if you take in bulk, well, maybe 100 search terms, 200, 300, 500, 1,000, whatever it is, and analyze the competitors, okay? Don't just analyze the competitors today, but you need to be tracking your competitors with whatever platform others are available, of course. Monitor your competitors and look to see, I would have passed you out, which ones have been improving, particularly around the time of either the helpful content or the product review or the core updates. The first 2 are more you can respond to more quickly. And then take note of the ones that have improved and then go and take a look at them and ask yourself the question, what are they doing that I could potentially be doing? Because Google is obviously rewarding those competitors. So it's no good just looking at the SERP today for one term. Look at the SERP over time for multiple terms. And I would say algorithmic adherence is super important. If you review products, to what extent do you need to follow the product review guidelines? Well, that depends on how closely your competitors adhere to it. If they do all 10 things that Google's looking for, or they do 5 of them, you need to do at least 7. And helpful content. Read the helpful content guidelines, consume them, sleep with them under your pillow. I do every night. I hug them as I go to bed, and the rest will happen. But really look at your competitors in the landscape. I hope that helps.
I think that was a good answer. All right. One from Ad Osborne. Is on-page SEO more influential for gaining good rankings rather than technical? Aiming for both, of course, but as long as the site health is reasonably good and the main push should be on the keyword research and content optimization to improve search visibility.
So if you do let me know if you want to jump in at any stage.
I was going to say, this is a good question. I just recently did a webinar with Lumar, who are formerly Deep Crawl, and we got into a very hefty debate about this. Obviously, them from the technical side, us from the content side. I feel, as you said, both are just so important. The technical side, I feel like, just gets you to the starting line, to be honest, but it has to be there to allow you to compete going forward. And I feel like the more we're seeing evolution in the SERPs, the more the two are tying together. So we see, for example, the introduction of popular products, which is prevalent now across US search results. And obviously you kind of need to be working a little bit with your technical SEO team there to make sure your content is shining through, then helping you things with implementing structured data, for example, and getting that all up to speed. So it's really difficult to answer the question, which is more important, because you can have amazing content, obviously, and be hindered by not having your site health in good shape. I think you have to have that foundation before you can start building on commercial opportunities with your content. Do you have anything to add, John?
Yeah, I would say what you said is absolutely perfect, Sophie. And I would say there's going to come a time when everybody's got their tech sorted. Everyone's got their core web vitals sorted. But until then, you'll often find it slower to get a response from the search engines in terms of positioning. Whereas take the product review guidelines, take helpful content. If you're working in a fiercely competitive e-commerce landscape, and you're at the bottom of page 1, I guarantee if you're not adhering to those guidelines and you shift the dial and you put in things like those quick jump links, you put persona-based links at the top, you talk about and demonstrate your experience, okay? You do that and your content will improve within 48 hours. We see that time and time and time again, day in, day out. Now, the rub comes when you're struggling to get really above the fold and your content is beautiful. Well, then you need to look at things like your core web vitals, because if your loading, interactivity and visual stability are not on point and your competitors are, then you are going to potentially struggle. That makes a difference above the fold. But you know what? For me, content is king. I've got to say it.
I'm sure that was a very, very interesting conversation with Lumar that day.
Yeah.
Or I wasn't there to hear that. Okay, so if you're dealing with multiple location pages for a client that has multiple locations as part of their local SEO strategy, how do we approach FAQs, etc., characteristics that would be, more valuable in each location without duplicating content?
Yeah, Google's gone in and out of favor with this sort of localization. People used to get away with it. But I would say you generally, okay, Google can with its sim hash, but you can run into conflict very, very easily with just having a paragraph here that's replicated to a paragraph over there. Doesn't matter if it's even off your site. That can still cause conflict. And we've tested that time and time again. So I think you really need to have a genuinely local theme to your content for it to work. That's the only way to get around it. And I would say if you're going to be doing this and you've got multiple locations and your content is similar, then I would set up a conflict report to monitor my performance, to look for it, because there will be degrees to which you can get away with this before Google says, hang on a minute, you've got that content there, which is 90% similar to that one, but you just add some local names in there. Okay, that might be difficult to get away with. The degree to which depends on how sensitive Google is feeling, but you need to set up a conflict report. I wouldn't get out of bed without looking at my conflict report.
Don't they tell you no devices before you get out of bed, John?
Yeah.
Yes. I'm sorry, Heather. Yeah, they do.
All right, so we'll take this maybe as our last question, but there's a couple more that maybe we'll send over to you all after the webinar if you want to answer them, John and Sophie. But this is a question from Carrie, and it's touching base on one that you all already answered. So does the red lipstick page in prior answers have to be in the navigation, or can it be on a landing so that you don't clutter the user experience with a huge navigation architecture?
Yeah. Unless I only sold 3 colors, I wouldn't put it in the navigation. I would simply have lipsticks. And then from there, you can either filter it on the left, and then we've got to think about what filters we expose to the search engines. But no, don't put it in your nav. But certainly make sure you are linking to it and then linking from it to the others and back up to the lipstick. So you got lipstick, then you got red, green, blue, yellow, orange. They can link to each other as well. Why not?
Obviously use the breadcrumb for all of that. And a sneaky trick we actually used when I was working in e-commerce was for focus products. So we didn't clutter the navigation and have all the merchandisers kind of shout at us. If there was a focus product or we wanted a really high authority link to go through to that category page, we put it in the footer. It's kind of hidden and it gives you some good authority to go through to that page without cluttering the navigation.
Great advice. Okay, we're going to leave. This will be the last question because, you know, I've been seeing this in several places, not just this webinar. And it's hot right now. It's a hot topic. Can we use AI tools like ChatGPT to optimize our content? Thank you, Ranjita, for sending in that question.
Oh, we could do it a month.
How happy are you, John, right now?
Trust me, I'm restraining myself. You can do the most wonderful things with ChatGPT. I can't even begin. I'm not going to go off on one, but can you use it for research? Absolutely. Can you use it to help pull off? It's like going into a library and pulling a load of different content and bringing it together. Absolutely. But you cannot simply roll that out and serve it up, because what is Google looking for? What did Google announce as part of EAT? As soon as everyone started talking about ChatGPT, well, they said double EAT, experience. So an AI can be an expert, like an expert system potentially, but it has no experience in the actual products or the services. So don't just roll it out. Use it for research, but craft your own content. And if you want a tip on something, then you can get that from ChatGPT. But I would say, be strong with your EAT and always reference those sources where information comes from. So yeah, it's not, you know, Google's going to pick up on that. And there are plenty of tools already that will say, yeah, that's not human, that's a robot content. And you will certainly fall foul of double EAT if you just farm that out there. But my goodness, we could talk forever on this subject, because there are, for all those bits, there are some incredible things that you can do with SEO and ChatGPT.
Absolutely. All right. Well, with that, I think we've reached about the end of our time. So John, Sophie, thank you so much for being here with us. Before we close out for the day, do you want to tell the people where to find you?
Yeah, definitely. So you can find us on our website, obviously, pidatametrics.com. We have, as we said, the John's SEO crash course coming up, but also on our website, you'll find loads of resources on the blog, through the category pages on the blog, actually. Very well implemented, thanks to John's advice. And yeah, obviously you can find John and I on LinkedIn. So if we haven't answered any of your questions today, then reach out to us there and we'll get back to you with those.
100%. And just want to say thank you so much for your time, everyone. Thanks for the comments. Lovely to see where you're all coming from. It's been such a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, everybody who took the time to be here with us today. I must say, John and Sophie, I think that's the most amount of hearts and high fives we've had in a webinar. So, you know, thank you. Thank you for providing such great content. And we'll see everybody on the next webinar. Have a good day.
Great.
Thanks.
Heather.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
guys. Bye.